Football with Farhan and Moj, brought to you by West Coast Auto Group and Chambers of Commerce Group Insurance. And first question for this one is, which team should be more worried at the quarterback position right now? Is it the Baltimore Ravens and Lamar Jackson, or is it the Cleveland Browns? And obviously we're talking about what we saw on Sunday night, and we understand that the Ravens are fully committed to Lamar Jackson going forward, and he's going to be their guy. But short-term Lamar Jackson going into the playoffs, when you know that performance can always crop up, or long-term, the Cleveland Browns, who might have a bigger picture decision to make on Mayfield?
Well, I think right now, you look at this situation between those two quarterbacks. For me, it's Baker Mayfield's health, right? I mean, I don't know how healthy he is. They say that he's getting better, but he just doesn't seem right. And when it comes to Lamar Jackson, you tell me, you're the quarterback connoisseur, it just seems like he's getting a little too fancy with some of his throws. Just put the ball in there with a little authority, zip it in. He's trying some of these sidearm throws, these little touch passes. Hey, zip the damn ball into the receiver's hands and you're fine. And it just seems right now he's trying to give you a little too cute.
Well, look, I don't know that you can take the creativity away from Lamar Jackson, but it's that type of game you need to make sure is out of your repertoire. And that's the problem. And look, we've seen a guy like even Patrick Mahomes, who's a creative player that's turned the ball over this year. But the one thing that I really like, and what I have seen noticeably in the case of Lamar Jackson, is he has developed as a passer. And they've had 3 come from behind wins this year, and that was him sitting in the pocket and slicing and dicing secondaries, which people didn't think he could do. So for him to revert to that, I'd be a little nervous going into the playoffs. Now, look, you're going to ride or die with Lamar Jackson. And for him, all 4 interceptions were on throws to tight end Mark Andrews. That's his guy. He's going to continue to go with him. Even the touchdown pass at the end could have been an interception. He just kind of flicked it up there and hoped that it would land before somebody else came and made the play. As far as Mayfield is concerned, you mentioned the injuries, but boy, I mean, even with a running game behind him, because Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt played in this last game, and the thought was that, he'd have more of his weapons and he'd be a bit more functional, and this team was in a much better place emotionally after getting rid of OBJ. The guy's got no chemistry with his receivers right now, and he just does not look like the same guy. He's got shoulder, foot, and knee injuries. In the past 3 weeks, he's completed just 50% of his passes for 165.3 yards per game. His TD to interception ratio, 3-3, and his passer rating is 65. Like, Moj, you can't win like that.
Well, how about the fact that the Browns have scored 17 or less in 6 of their last 7 games? And if you're a Browns fan, what is really scary right now, how about their running game only getting 40 yards against the Ravens? If that running game gets shut down, man, oh man, all of a sudden, if you put Baker Mayfield in a 2nd and 10s and 3rd and 12s or whatever the case may be, doesn't bode well for the Cleveland Browns.
Yeah, I mean, that was the 31st ranked pass defense in the NFL, the Ravens. And yet, he couldn't get much done in the pass game, in that game. And then afterwards, Kevin Stefanski, their head coach, was asked, look, would you think of Case Keenum and just sitting Baker for a while, because the playoffs aren't out of the picture yet. They're sitting there at 6-6, and he said, why would I do that, right? Like, he just has no intention of making the change. But again, they have to make a decision this offseason about whether or not to pick up Mayfield's option year, and I don't do it. Let's look at the quarterbacks that were taken in that 2018 draft. We've got it graphically here. Baker Mayfield's a 500 quarterback right now. He was the first overall pick in the draft. You look at Lamar Jackson, 37-10, sitting there at 32nd. Josh Allen is the guy that, started slow, but he's really improved right in the middle of the pack there. And Darnold and Rosen are probably going to be out of the league sooner than later. But, if I've got to make that decision and pick up that option year, I'm not doing it for Baker Mayfield.
Big question is, who do you replace him with? It's always easy to get rid of someone and say, you know what, we don't want this guy, we want something better. Who do you find on the market that's going to be better than Baker Mayfield? That's the big question.
Well, look, you've given him 4 years. Maybe it's time to go back to the draft. Like, that's what the NFL looks like. When you think you've got a quarterback, or when you think you've got a guy you've taken in the first round, don't assume that guy's always going to be a mainstay for your organization.
First overall pick, never mind. First overall pick, usually you're talking about a guy who's going to have a Hall of Fame career.
If it's a bad marriage, don't keep throwing good after bad, right? Like, at some point, you got to punt here, and this may be that time. Meanwhile, the 49ers are finally starting to get their head wrapped around what their offense is supposed to look like. And they were all over the Minnesota Vikings, 34-26 in this game, in a game that was probably a little more one-sided than the score indicates. But for the last 3 weeks, Kyle Shanahan said, hey, wait, 2 years ago when I got to the Super Bowl, I didn't trust my quarterback. I ran the football a lot. And guess what he's doing now? The last 3 games, they are averaging almost 42 rushing attempts and close to 180 rushing yards per game. They've taken the ball out of Garoppolo's hands. Guess what? They're 3-0 and in a wild card spot.
Well, the turning point for the Rams was the game the turning point for San Francisco was the game against the Rams. Why? Because Shanahan challenged his team. He said, we want to run the ball 40 times against the Rams. This vaunted defense heading into that game. Guess what? They did. They imposed their will on the Rams, and they've done it every week since then. They are now committed to that identity, and I love it because he challenged his players' manhood. He did. He said, we're going to run the ball. I want you to run the ball 40 times against the Rams and 40 times basically every game. That requires you imposing your will, and the 49ers have done it. I love it.
Well, and they've been injured at running back, and that hasn't stopped them. They've taken Deebo Samuel, a receiver, put him in the backfield. He becomes the first receiver ever to score rushing touchdowns in 3 consecutive games in the same season. Now, unfortunately for him, fortunately for the Seahawks, their opponent next week, Deebo's going to be out 1 to 2 weeks with a groin injury. But here's the stat that jumps out at me, because when you face a team like the Titans with Derrick Henry, or a team that is now so committed to running the football like the 49ers, you're going to see stacked boxes. But you still have to be able to run the football right now. Elijah Mitchell gained 81 yards and scored a touchdown on 16 rushes against a stacked box. He averaged 5.1 yards per carry with extra men at the line of scrimmage. That is the statement, that you're not just doing it because everyone's playing, zone coverage and playing in nickel trying to defend the pass. They know you're going to run it, and you're still able to run.
We're going to find out a lot about San Francisco in the last 6 games as well. 4 of their last 6 on the road, including trips to Cincinnati, Tennessee, and playing the Rams.
Well, notice how you didn't say playing the Seahawks, because that doesn't really matter right now. The Seahawks just laid an absolute egg offensively in Washington on Monday Night Football. It's over. It's over. The Seahawks are not making the playoffs. It would have been they've been there 9 times in 10 years under Russell Wilson, and that is not going to continue. The most losses in a season for Wilson. They're 3-8 right now. They've got a 1% chance, according to ESPN. This team is horrific on third down. They were 4 of 12 in this game. They've got the worst third down offense in the league. There is no chance they're going to beat San Francisco at home.
Well, here's the other thing, too. As bad as the offense has been, everyone's talking about the defense and this bend but don't break. We watched that game last night. They can't play man. We had Lofa Tatupu on our Seahawk postgame show talking about that game, and all they did was play that soft zone, and guess what? They just picked them apart. Taylor Heineke did, 27 of 34, whatever the number was. And it was just those 6 or 7 yard passes that put Washington into a great position on 2nd and 3rd, 2nd and 4, 3rd and 3, manageable downs and distances. And that's why the Seahawks can't get off the field defensively. Everyone always says, it's a matter of fatigue. Take a look at the first 12 minutes of the game. Washington had the ball 11 minutes and change. Seattle had it for like $140 or whatever it was in the first 13 minutes. It's crazy. They can't get off the field.
No, they can't. And going back to the offensive side of the ball, they don't get the ball to DK Metcalf. It's like there's no actual plan to get the ball to DK Metcalf. He had his first target. It didn't come until the 3rd quarter. You can't have that. He had just 1 reception in this game, which was a 3rd down completion for an out on the final drive of the game, I believe it was. So Russell Wilson turned 33 on Monday. There's a real question to be asked. We've asked it before. We'll see if there's any change of direction. Don't expect to change this season because it's Geno Smith. It's not like they've got a young quarterback they want to evaluate. 49ers favored by 3.5 in Seattle. That is a rarity for the Seahawks to be a home underdog. San Francisco is going to cover easily in this game as I see it.
Yeah, I don't see the Seahawks. I look at this one. This could be like a 30-10 score when it's all said and done. That's how bad Seattle is right now, and that's how good San Francisco's playing right now.
Meanwhile, the Colts looked like they had the Bucs. The Bucs came from behind to win this game 38-31, and slowly but surely the Bucs are starting to look like the team that finished last season. Now, Tom Brady didn't light the world on fire in the last game. I don't think any wide receiver caught more than 24 yards worth of passes. However, you got Rob Gronkowski involved in this game, right? He was over 100 yards. He had a career, or at least a Tampa Bay Bucs career day for him, and their defense is starting to come into form, especially their run defense.
Well, if you talk about the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, hey, Vegas has them as a favorite to win the Super Bowl, plus 500. All the teams, 500, 550, numbers are out there. They're winning despite the injuries in their secondary, and now they're starting to get some guys back. I look at the corner position, which has been a revolving door for the Buccaneers all year long. Carlton Davis has missed the last 7 games with a calf injury. He's expected to return to the lineup. So if they can get that secondary healthy, particularly their corner position, all of a sudden that defense goes to another level. We know what they have on offense, and the one thing I love about the Buccaneers, they've been there, done that, and they have so many veteran players with experience, and that really is a big factor when you get into playoff games, when you get into these big games in December and January.
Yeah, a guy like Lombardi Lenny, Leonard Fournette, 4 touchdowns in that game. So, if they're being a little more conservative at the pass game, they know that they can always lean on him. And because of Tom Brady, you have to defend the pass. Leonard Fournette faced 0 stacked boxes in the last game. And, that just makes it so much easier for him. Also, Antonio Brown is expected back this week. So he's been out the last few weeks as well. But if you're the Colts, wasted opportunity. You had 2 10-point leads in this game, and you let it slip away. And they kind of went away from Jonathan Taylor, right, who's been leading everything since Derrick Henry went down as far as running the football is concerned. They really went away from him until the fourth quarter in this game.
Old football expression, baby. It's not how you start, it's how you finish. And the Colts had an opportunity to finish the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. When you have the Tampa Bay Buccaneers down by 10, you have to go for the jugular, be up by 17, go up by 20, whatever the case may be. But they let the Buccaneers back into the game, not once, but twice.
Yeah, absolutely. And you look at why did it happen? 5 turnovers. Meanwhile, as far as being able to stop Jonathan Taylor, you know that Bruce Arians, he loves to crow a little bit when things go well. This week was no different.
How much emphasis did you put on stopping the run? And were you surprised they've dropped back 26 straight times?
Yeah, nobody runs the ball in us. I don't care who the hell you are. I mean, you're going to end up throwing it because if you're going to run it all day, you're not going to get much. And they did that last drive. We were a little bit playing pass defense, and they ran it on us. But I'll take our run defense versus anybody's run offense anytime.
Vita Vea also back for that game. That also made a big difference in that run defense. I want to talk a bit about the Miami Dolphins. 1-7. They were left for dead. They've won 4 straight. Tua Tagovailoa is turned into a guy, right? Like he's over 80% passing in his last 2 games. They're putting more on him. The defense is finally, slowly starting to look like last year's defense. And when you look at the schedule, they've got to bye surrounding games with the Jets and Giants. This team could be 500 by Christmas and in the playoff picture.
Okay, we're talking about the Miami Dolphins. I know 4 wins in a row, whatever, they're on a roll. Give me one statement win from the Miami Dolphins this year. One statement win. Who's the statement? They beat Baltimore, and we know how Baltimore's been this year with all the injuries. They've been up and down. That's the only game I look at in terms of Miami's schedule and say that is a pretty good team or a good team. I just don't see a statement win out of those games. I just think they're getting it done. Yeah, you got to play who's on your schedule. I understand that.
You're going to find out. Do you think the Buffalo Bills are legit?
Yeah, they're legit. But
they played 1 500 team. One.
They've
beaten 1 500.
Pardon me. The Bills are a good team. Don't get me wrong. But I have concerns with the Bills as well. I've talked about it as well. They beat 1 500 team. Kansas City when Kansas City was struggling. I'm not all sold on the Buffalo Bills either.
Meanwhile, our Canadian boy Javon Holland continues to elevate defensively. Another interception in this game. And Myles Gaskin with the running game, he had 2 touchdowns as well. Dolphins, they had 22 first downs. They held the ball for 37 minutes. And again, I more than anything, being the quarterback guy that I am, Moj, I'm loving seeing Tua elevate. And guess what? You know when it changed? It changed after the trade deadline. When all the Deshaun Watson rumors went away, all of a sudden he was able to play with less pressure. He has been significantly better since that moment 1 month ago.
I think we find out a lot about the Dolphins when they go up against the Patriots in the final weekend of the season, if that game matters for the Patriots. But we'll find out about the Dolphins' development, how much of a team they are when they go up against New England.
Dolphins are favored by 3 at home against the Giants. Take the Dolphins to win this game all day. Meanwhile, Cam Newton, 5 of 21, 92 yards and 2 touchdowns. He got benched. He is expected to start this week, but I think the honeymoon after that first game when everybody got excited about Cam's return, it's over.
Yeah, I mean, you see that a lot in various sports. You see a player coming back to an organization or joining a team, and there's this big adrenaline rush at the start, and people are excited, and then all of a sudden kind of crashes back to reality a little bit. And maybe that's what we saw with Cam Newton in game number 2 as a Panther.